Candyman, this is a sequel to the 1992 film Candyman, directed by Bernard. Why am I blanking on the name over here? Bernard Rose. Bernard Rose, the original.
Oh, okay.
The director of the original.
Oh.
Nia DaCosta directs this one. By the way, say her name. Say her name, Nia DaCosta. Put some respect on it when you do. I'm sick of this being billed as a Jordan Peele movie, even though he did co-write it along with another guy, Win Rosefield, I believe his name is, Win Rosenfeld, who wrote some of the episodes of Twilight Zone. Say Nia DaCosta's name, for Christ's sake, first and foremost. Anyway, but yeah, this is a sequel to the 1992 film. It disregards the 290 sequels that we got, Candyman, Flesh of the Beast, I think, and Candyman, Day of the Dead. It rejects those. So it's a straight sequel to the original. And I'm going to say right off the bat, a pretty damn good one. Because this movie, and it kind of bites it in the ass at some parts too, especially just the pacing of it. DaCosta, Rosenfeld, and Peele, the writers of this movie, they do a tricky dance here, and it mostly pays off. But even if it doesn't pay off extremely, I'm glad they did it. They're in that burdensome space where they're trying to acknowledge and service the original movie while trying to forge a new path. And they're very respectful to the original Candyman movie and the Candyman character. They're very respectful to that, and that is apparent in the beginning because they don't try to remake the original and they don't try to deviate too far off course. So this, by all intents and purposes, is a very good sequel. Not without its flaws, but a very good sequel through and through. A sequel, too, that does not have the benefit of a lot of big names. You have Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, who is in Aquaman, who was in the Trial of the Chicago 7. You have Teyonah Parris, who was in, I believe, Mad Men. Is that the one she was in? She was in Mad Men. And then you have Coleman Domingo, who's just really good here as a laundromat owner.
I love Coleman Domingo.
Coleman Domingo's great.
He's got the coolest voice ever, man.
That's a guy who needs to narrate my memoir when I finally write it. He's great.
He was great.
And he's great here.
Yeah, I was going to say, he was great in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, too. Mm-hmm. Like, I remember, like, he was... Anytime he was talking, yes. I would like just be drawn in just how cool his voice sounds, man.
Yes, and he was also in If Beale Street Could Talk, another Barry Jenkins movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, this movie from the jump is very deftly acted, and this movie too is so very Chicago. We all live in Illinois. This movie is so Chicago, and I just watched the original Candyman for the first time yesterday. And I thoroughly loved it. I'm pissed that I didn't see it before. The original Candyman, Joe's already seen it now twice, and Dom has yet to see it. The original Candyman is so good. It's more of like a gothic drama than it is a slasher movie, but it has elements of a slasher movie. And it's a really fascinating movie. And I didn't really know until recently, too, when I was researching these movies to prep to review them, that they did revolve around the Cabrini Green housing projects, which if you've lived in Chicago or Illinois, you really have no excuse not to know what those were and some of the history behind those projects that I believe were demolished. That and Henry Horner were demolished in 2011. I believe that's when they finally were destroyed. And now the area, the near north side of Chicago, has been all built up and gentrified. They talk about it in this new one, in this new Candyman film. But I like a lot of this movie. There's a lot to chew on here. Joe, I'll start with you.
I kind of had to step away, unfortunately, as the viewers saw. I had somebody call me downstairs. But I did hear you kind of talk about the script a little bit, or at least the writing with this movie. And I just want to get this out of the way. I do think the weakest part of this movie is some of the writing. There's a lot of stuff I feel like is kind of... They bring up in the movie. They don't really wrap up. They don't really come back to it later. Or I will say this too. They introduce a ton of characters in this movie that are literally just made to be killed. Like, I mean, literally, that's all they are there to be. I was just like, all right. Like, there's even a point. It was just shocking that, like, Jordan Peele would like do this in a horror film, because I feel like he's better than this, and even the other writers as well, Nia DaCosta and Win Rosenfeld, where like they do the whole gimmick of having sex in a horror movie and then you're gonna die because you're having sex, and I was just like, really weird choices. But besides that, I mean, it sounds like, I might not be liking this movie. No, I actually really did like the movie a lot. This movie to me got a lot better the longer it went on. Because when it first started, I would say like the first act of this movie, it's a very, not slow burn, but it's taking its time to really develop these characters and really actually build them up. And I was like, this is it's an interesting take, man. Like it's much more of an artistic look than I was expecting. I don't know why, but like for some reason I did go into this movie expecting a slasher film, and I'm not saying I'm not upset about it. I'm actually happy it wasn't that. I don't know, because like I guess I'm just in that mindset that whenever something is like the sequel to an original thing nowadays or a remake, I immediately think like, oh, it's gonna be that, but it might be like more of a upbeat slasher version of that. No, this is very much, as Steve was saying, they very much respect the original Candyman in this. Like it is a horror film, but it is like it has a commentary about what's going on today and everything, just like the original did. And I think that it served the movie very well. The one thing that I would say that I really loved about this movie is the director. I think Nia DaCosta did a great job with this movie. I'm gonna get some some shots of this as well, but is shot composition, cinematography, lighting, all that stuff in this movie looks absolutely fantastic at times, man. The opening credits of this movie to me were just like something so simple as just shooting Chicago upside down, and I thought, that looks cool as hell. Like
on a foggy rainy day or foggy day.
Yeah, it's really mesmerizing. I was like, this is such like a really trippy way. Like she did a very good job. I mean, like, she hasn't really done anything really big yet. This is probably her biggest project, and I'm glad Jordan Peele found her and let her take reins with something as big as Candyman. This like, this cult phenomenon of, a horror film back from the 90s. And like, I gotta say, she did such a damn good job directing here. And I very much enjoyed the little like cool, because one of my friends said that he found this to be kind of just like a little stupid and dumb that they did it like this, but when they were explaining the origin of Candyman, they did the cool like little vignettes with the paper mache like creature,
the shadow puppets.
Yeah, the shadow puppets with paper and everything. And it's just like, look, at the end of the day, I'd rather have that than a guy standing in front of me and just telling me the legend and not have any cool visuals with it. But like with that being said, and I did enjoy the acting. I think what's his name, the main character who plays Anthony McCoy,
Yahya Abdul-Mateen the second.
I thought he was great in this movie, especially like as the movie goes along, the more he starts to lose his mind, the more I'm just like, damn, like he is knocking this out of the park. Like I think the three characters, Anthony McCoy played by Yahya Abdul-Mateen, Teyona Paris, who plays his girlfriend Brianna, and then Coleman Domingo, who plays as this laundromat owner named William. I thought all three of them were really well, like, not well done, but they were like, at least like I was into what was happening with them. When you get to like other characters in this film, I'm not kidding when I tell you, like, they are just there to be killed. There's a snotty like art critic, and it's just like, all right, like that's gonna be somebody that's gonna be killed later on. And like there's literally a point where like they're at an art exhibit and the camera goes on one character and is following them for about like a minute straight. I'm like, what the hell does this have to do with anything? It's literally just to serve a massacre later on in the movie. A massacre that I feel like doesn't really get brought up again, or really like the impact of that thing should be a lot bigger in my opinion. And I was just like, in the original Candyman, when people died, like you did see the investigations going on with the murderers, and the character that was the main character, I forgot her name,
Helen Lyle
was brought in for questioning in that movie and everything. Like when somebody died in that movie, like there was a direct impact to the main character. When people die in this movie, Anthony doesn't suffer really any of that, other than like he sees that like people are dying because it has something to do with his work in some sort of way, because he's a painter and he basically painted the legacy of Candyman. Who actually gives out candy in this movie compared to the other ones. And it's just like, I was looking at that, I'm just like, damn, you guys, like, for every step you guys take forward, I know I'm talking for a long time here, I'm really sorry, but for every step you're taking forward with the Candyman mythos and like, the legend and respecting the original, there is some writing stuff here that I'm just like, I expected a little bit better from Jordan Peele, who is a writer on here and everything. especially after his last two movies with Us and Get Out, that like I feel like in those movies, especially Get Out, they made sure to cover all bases and make sure like leave enough room for interpretation. And also just answer any questions at the end of the movie. With this, I mean, like, you get Candyman's origin story, I think, like 5 times in this movie, and I was just like, Jesus Christ, I don't want to hear it this many times, guys.
Like, it's horrifying. It's horrifying, but yeah, they do kind of run through it like at least 3 times.
And again, it sounds like I don't like this movie. I really do. I'm not kidding. Like, I had a great time watching this. It's just I was kind of frustrated with it. It is a good sequel. I do agree with Steve here. I think it's the only good sequel to Candyman, and for that, it has my utmost respect because I do love that original film a lot. Dom, I'll pass it off to you.
No, yeah. So the only time I'll say this, which is that for this show, which is that I don't watch a lot of horror at all. I try to avoid it at all costs. I'm really just doing it for this show, and honestly, I'm really glad I did. And I've kind of broken it with. I think The Conjuring was like the most horror I've ever really gotten into, and it wasn't that bad. So I'm glad I'm breaking the mold. I'll do it for the show. I probably won't do it on my own. But what I really appreciate is horror with a purpose, as opposed to horror for horror's sake. And I understand there's like deeper meanings, but like you could read into, I don't know, the Halloween series and like feminism and all that stuff. Sure. But for me, I needed something a little bit more on the surface. And Candyman was that for me. And to the point where I was watching this film, I was like, this doesn't really feel too, I mean, it is squarely in the horror genre, no doubt. But to me, it's not horror, you know what I mean when I say that. And just looking at it, it just struck me that, like, yeah, going into the Chicago point, like, I'm really happy that Chicago is back in the film world again, squarely, kind of like where it's coming back slowly from where it was the center of the movie universe in the 80s, it seemed like, where everything happened in Chicago there if it happened on film. And I'm glad that it's coming under the guise of like social awareness, social consciousness. I'm going to forget so many more, but the Fred Hampton movie, Judas and the Black Messiah. I'm already blanking. Transformers. I'll end it there. But like, I'm really glad that the social consciousness has come back through Chicago, and very much a contrast to where a lot of those 80s movies were set in the suburbs of Chicago, the wealthier parts of Chicago, and more so the parts where it had a lot of white protagonists who had a lot of privilege and stuff. Not to say that their problems were necessarily invalid or anything, but we're getting into some real hard societal thing, like Cabrini Green. Like, my goodness, look at the Wikipedia page for Cabrini Green, and you'll get so much there and so many links to other things. Like,
I reread it last night, actually.
It's pretty insane. Like, it had a high crime rate because, of course, it's a project. Therefore, a lot of social inequality and all that stuff, and police brutality and all that stuff. And like the mayor, Jane,
Jane
F up her name. Yeah, thank you. She tried a publicity stunt where she tried to live at Cabrini Green for like 3 weeks, saying, "Oh, it's very quiet, it's very lovely," and it's like, nah, dude, you're the first woman mayor of Chicago, but like, you don't get it. You do not get this. Anyway, bringing it back to Candyman, I'm just really happy to see that back on the screen, and really, I just enjoy the fact that Jordan Peele is the guy to do this stuff with. Of course, Get Out is so far his magnum opus, and I'm glad that at least he's hammering on this subject, and that he is kind of the go-to guy. Maybe he becomes cliche, just he's like, oh yeah, he's the guy who talks about black social issues in all the movies he writes. Dude, awesome, go for it. Like, you show me something every time. So no matter what the critique is, and there are a couple things to critique here, not gonna lie, I'm very fortunate for that, because I do learn something coming out of this, and I get like, honestly, like the ending credits with the paper mache.
That was so good.
Yeah, that was so good. That was a movie in itself.
Yeah.
Like, the horror, honestly, the horror doesn't come from the jump scares, the darkness, the slashing, all that stuff. The horror comes from the context of like all the shit around.
Yeah.
Right.
The actual real world.
Like, to be honest with you, when I guess slight spoiler, but when Coleman Domingo goes off the rails here, which you kind of anticipated, but like when Coleman Domingo goes off the rails here, like it's a little scary and frightening. I'm scared for the characters involved. But when the police show up, That's even like that was like I felt that 5 times more. I'm like, holy shit!
I'm like Peele helped do it again.
Dude,
with the cops
he did it
showing
again.
up.
I was about to
He
say,
did it
yeah.
again.
Except this time it ended how we thought it was gonna go.
Exactly, and it could it have been? I know we're a minute here, but could it have been executed a lot better here? I'll continue on after the break, and I'll go into some critiques. But overall, I'm just glad that this movie was made and that they were able to do something so effective with something that could have been such a formulaic disaster.
Yeah.